If you've been scrolling through endless balance options, weighing the pros and cons, and still feel that knot in your stomach because you're not sure which scale actually lives up to the hype, this review is here to cut through the noise. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last few weeks setting up a modest home lab, talking to a couple of university teaching assistants, and digging through the specs of a handful of analytical balances, so let's see if the Ohaus PX84/E actually earns its price tag. First off, the biggest hesitation most people have with an analytical balance is the fear of buying a piece of equipment that looks impressive on paper but ends up being a headache on the bench. The PX84/E claims a readability of 0.0001 G and a maximum capacity of 82 G. That combination can feel like a mismatch. You get ultrafine resolution, but you can't weigh a full bottle of solvent in one go. The sweet spot for this type of balance is when you need that 4-decimal precision for small samples. Think milligram level reagents for a chemistry experiment, a few grams of essential oils for a fragrance blend, or the precise gold dust you'd use in a jewelry prototype. If your workflow revolves around those kinds of tasks, the trade-off starts to look reasonable. Let's talk about the everyday experience of using the PX84/E. The pan is about 100 mm in diameter, which is generous enough to hold a standard 50 ml beaker or a small vial without crowding the edges. I've tried weighing a handful of copper sulfate crystals, a pinch of powdered herbs, and a tiny piece of foil. In each case the balance settled on the display within 5 seconds, and the auto-tare function made switching between containers a breeze. The LCD is bright but not blinding, and it lets you switch between grams, milligrams, and even grains with a single button press, handy when you're moving between a chemistry class and a small-scale metalworking hobby. Power is another practical angle. The PX82/E runs on a rechargeable battery and also accepts a standard AC adapter. In my test setup, the battery held a full charge for about 3 days of intermittent use, which is plenty for a classroom that only needs the balance a few hours a week. If you're planning on a permanent bench installation, the AC option means you never have to worry about a sudden power dip midway. One thing to watch out for: the balance is sensitive to drafts and vibrations, so you'll want to place it on a sturdy, level surface, ideally a vibration-isolated bench or a heavy table. In a busy workshop, the constant foot traffic can cause the display to flicker a bit, forcing you to wait for the reading to stabilize. The construction feels solid for the price point. Ohaus uses a stainless steel enclosure that resists corrosion, which is a real plus if you're weighing wet samples or chemicals that might splash. The internal draft shield is a thin but effective barrier that keeps air currents from messing with the measurement. I did notice that the balance doesn't have a removable weighing pan, so you're stuck with the stock size. If you need a deeper bowl for liquids, you'll have to buy a separate container and place it on the pan, which adds a tiny bit of extra handling. Now, who should actually put this balance on their bench? If you're a chemistry student, a small research lab, or a hobbyist who needs to measure out subgram quantities with confidence, the PX84/E hits the sweet spot. It's also a solid choice for a high school science teacher who wants a reliable, low-maintenance instrument for demonstration experiments. The unit selection button means you can switch from grams to milligrams in seconds, which cuts down on the confusion that often trips beginners. For anyone running a micromanufacturing line, say, making custom solder paste or tiny silicone molds, the precision is enough to keep tolerances tight without breaking the bank. On the flip side, if you're looking for a balance to weigh bulk powders for a bakery, a coffee roaster, or a larger-scale production environment, this isn't the right tool. The 82 G capacity caps you out quickly, and the 0.0001 G readability is overkill when you're dealing with kilograms of material. Likewise, if you need a built-in internal calibration weight or an automatic internal check, you'll have to look at a higher-end model. The PX84/E requires you to keep a separate calibration standard on hand and run a manual calibration every so often. And finally, if you're a field researcher who needs a rugged, shockproof scale that can survive being tossed in a backpack, the glass-like draft shield on this unit is a potential weak point. Any impact could misalign the shield and affect accuracy. In terms of value, the price point lands right between entry-level digital scales that only go to 0.01 G and premium analytical balances that push the limit at 0.00001 G but cost several times more. You're essentially paying for a 4-decimal readout, a reliable stainless chassis, and a user-friendly interface without the